Girl, you're 30. Go to therapy. Hi, I read 4 books in January and here are quick summaries and reviews of each of them. The first book I read this month, and I read it in a day, is It All Comes Back to You by Farah Rishi. And this book is about Kiran, who has just graduated from high school and is looking forward to moving in with her older sister, Amira. But Amira has decided that she wants to get married. Now Kiran is kind of hurt by this and feels lost after this announcement that she kind of wants to find something suspicious about Faisal, the fiancé. It doesn't really help that Faisal's brother is Kiran's ex-boyfriend, Dean. It's a YA romance coming of age story. And what I really liked about this story was how Kiran's interests were woven into the story. You know, she likes role-playing games. She loves to dance, but she had to put it on the back burner because she wants to honor her mother's memory and go to university to become a doctor. I liked how all of those interests were woven into the story. However, at times, Kiran, she's worried about her sister because, she doesn't really know Faisal personally. She knows that there's something suspicious about him. So some of the actions that Kiran takes to stop the marriage, like some of them I understand, but some of them are way out of line and just hurtful, which I guess is like a very typical YA main character learning moment in the story. Personally, I really loved Dean's character. While he made some mistakes and, fell down a few times, he was committed to becoming a better person. It was a sweet, enjoyable, entertaining story. I really liked reading this book, even though I'm not the age demographic for it. I feel like if the story focused on Amira and Faisal's love and like their perspectives, it would have been more enjoyable for me because the characters were around my age. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed it. I read it as an ebook. I read it in a day during a train trip back from Helsinki to Oulu. And yeah, I had fun reading it. The next book I read was a physical book that I own. You all got me all the Moomin books for birthday present. Is Muuminpeikko ja Pyrstötähti by Tove Jansson, which is in English, Comments in Moominland. And as you can see, it's a very short story. It's an adventurous, imaginative story that I really enjoyed. So basically, Moomin and Sniff had some adventures at the beach, and then afterwards they come home and they learn about a star with a tail, hence Pyrstötähti, and they adventure off to the lonely mountains. And while they go there, they meet Snufkin, Snork Maiden, Hemulen. It feels so weird to say this in English. They're Nuuskamoikkunen, Niiskuneiti, Hemuli. Basically, they go on to the lonely mountains to an observatory there, and they are told that a comet is gonna hit the earth, and they rush back home to tell everyone in Moomin Valley what's going to happen. I love how reflective this is of the human experience and just life in general, even though they're not humans. And it's a sweet, lovely adventure, and I love how Tove Jansson uses language. The illustrations are incredible. Let me find one. For example, here. Wow, beautiful. And one of my favorite parts of the story was whenever Sniff would refer to themselves as a tiny small creature. It was so cute because in the Moomin animation, Sniff is portrayed as a tall being, so it was really sweet. So my significant other Joel got me a box set of different Moomin books for my birthday, so I will be reading a lot more Moomin this year, and I absolutely love it. The third book I read this year, and I read as an ebook, was Dila Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. And the story of it is the main character, Delilah Green, is a photographer living in New York. And basically she had a tough childhood. She lost both of her parents when she was young, and then she lived with her step family and didn't really feel loved in the family, that she was always alone and so on. So when she grew up, she kind of went no contact with her stepsister and stepmother, but now Astrid, the stepsister, is getting married and Delilah Green has been invited to be a photographer at the wedding and like the events before the wedding. So for Delilah Green, going back to her hometown is really difficult, and then at the bar she comes across her high school crush, Claire, and Claire actually hits her up first. So the story is about exploring their feelings for each other. Delilah Green is this very kind of typical struggling artist with a dark, sad background that we've read a lot of times, and I feel like this portrayal of this archetype doesn't really bring anything new to the table. At times, I understand that Delilah Green had to go through awful things and she was still struggling to accept things about her past and learn how to live with them, and especially after being hurt by so many people, by being ignored by them. But at times, Delilah Green is just poorly just malicious. And that's just like, girl, you're 30. Go to therapy. This kind of behavior, no matter how much you hurt, is not okay. It was really frustrating to read her being just mean as a grown woman. And a lot of the plot was just people not talking to each other and misunderstanding and believing those misunderstandings, which was really frustrating to read, as I said. I didn't really like the main character yet, but I did like kind of the side characters, Astrid, Iris, Claire. I was really interested in their dynamic and their backgrounds and how their stories were presented. I even cared more about Josh, Claire's ex, and they share a child together. Like, I was rooting for him more than the main character, Delilah Green. I'm happy I read this book. I was actually intrigued by this book when I saw it at the airport last year, but I didn't pick it up then, and I'm kind of happy I didn't. I'm happy I read the book, but I wasn't really happy with it. And the fourth book I read this year, and is a contender to be a favorite book, is En voi sua unhoittaa pois by Anu Vähäaho, and it roughly translates to I Cannot Forget About You. So the book is set in 1820s Oulu, Finland. Now during this time, Finland was under Russian rule. Before Russian rule, Finland was under Swedish rule, and this was still seen in the setting of the book by people communicating in Swedish because it was seen as the better language compared to Finnish. Finland, and of course Oulu then, was under Russian rule. Just a historical context to begin with. The book follows Emerentia Brandt, who is also called Emmi, who is a 25-year-old young woman who works as a teacher. She had lost her mother, and subsequent to that, she had to leave her small hometown and move to Oulu, the big city, with her father and her new stepmother. But although she had to go through this awful thing, of losing her mother, she's happy with her life. She's happy with teaching. She is happy to be with her young cousin, spending time with her loved ones. Although people pressure her to get married, she's happy with her life. A notable part of history in Oulu is Sara Wackling, who was one of the first teachers to teach girls in the country, so that was really cool to see as well. So that's our main character, Emerentia Brandt, and the other lead character, the love interest, if I can spoil, is Lawrence von Rosen, who is a Swedish nobleman from Stockholm. And he's a bit lost in life. He's kind of just in the mold that he's been given, but he's not very happy with his life. So his friend August kind of forces him on this trip to Oulu from Stockholm. And this trip to Oulu slowly but surely kind of changes everything for him. So Emerentia and Lawrence kind of get to know each other slowly, at different events, but also outside of different events. It's very slow but enjoyable and just lovely. And I have to say, okay, so I've lived in Oulu for almost 7 years. I'm not from here, but I did go to upper secondary school here. While my parents are from elsewhere in Finland, I have always lived nearby Oulu. So Oulu is a very special city to me, and it feels like a hometown for me. So to read a historical fiction, which is my favorite genre, based in Oulu, my hometown, where I live right now, it felt like a puzzle piece was added to my heart. It felt so right and so wonderful to read about these different settings that I personally know, like, oh, I went there last week or something like that. And especially whenever the characters would speak in the dialect that is spoken here in Oulu. Reading characters that speak like me, it felt so right, and it felt so wonderful and lovely and comforting to read these characters that spoke like me, who live in the place like me. And so much of Finnish books are set in Helsinki, so to have this wonderful historical fictional story set in Oulu, like, it meant a lot to me personally, and it just got me thinking, like, okay, people who speak English as their native language and as their only language, and people who read about their home cities like New York and London, like, do they have this kind of feeling that, like, oh my god, I'm reading about people like me? I don't know. I had a deep connection to this book. The book also features a lot of historical events that happened in Oulu. Major part of the plot is when major parts of Oulu burned down in 1822, and it was interesting how this fire affected personal relationships. You know, people died, people lost their homes. How did people start viewing life so differently after the fire? Like, it was super interesting. Now, as I mentioned, it was quite slow at times, but I feel like my brain needs slow entertainment. And at times there were these situations where a character would just tell another character about something that happened, which I didn't mind, but it was something that I noted. But overall, this is like a contender for my favorite book, like top of my favorite books, because it was really lovely to read. I felt a personal connection to it, and I just really loved Emerentia Brandt. She was so kind and smart and confident in herself, and she knew what she wanted. I absolutely loved reading that. I borrowed this from the library. I actually reserved it in September or October, and I got it this January. So it's a very popular book. It's a recent release, and I'm sure that people love to read about a romance and historical fiction books set in Oulu. So those were the 4 books that I read this month. I feel like I had a really good reading month, and that's why I wanted to make this video. I don't know if I'll do monthly recaps this year. I had a really good reading month, and I wanted to make a video to show that you can have a good reading month, and you don't have to read like 30 books to have a good reading month. Jarl and I also started reading Emma. You know, last year we read Pride and Prejudice together, so now we are reading Emma. We're about halfway through, so that has also been exciting. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you would like to see more videos of me discussing pop culture, history and books, mostly books, please consider subscribing to this channel. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!